President-elect Trump is confirming plans he'll declare a national emergency and use the U.S. military to carry out mass deportations of undocumented immigrants once he takes office in January. Trump responded, quote, true to a social media post yesterday from conservative activist Tom Fitton that stated, quote, reports are the incoming Trump administration prepared to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program. Additionally, the New York Times reports Trump's top immigration policy advisor, Stephen Miller, has said military funds will be used to build, quote, vast holding facilities that would function as staging centers for immigrants as their cases progress and they wait to be flown to other countries. Miller also said the facilities would be operated by the Department of Homeland Security. At the same time, NBC News has reported the incoming Trump administration has been in talks with private prison companies about drastically expanding immigrant detention centers. Also yesterday, the ACLU sued the federal government for information about how authorities might quickly remove people from the U.S. The lawsuit alleges that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement have failed to respond to requests for basic information about its existing contracts with private airline companies, ground transportation services, and airfields, and policies governing deportation flights, including those carrying children.
You know, Jonathan Lemire, this is, by the way, this is one issue on background that we discussed where there was a suggestion that there could be a deal worked out with Democrats. We'll see if that's the case. But, you know, in 1954, Ike had the inappropriately named Operation Wetback, which was a military-style deportation. But they did not use, from anything I've read, the United States military in 1954.
Not even in the 50s.
They used a lot of Border Patrol agents. There were like 300 Jeeps. There were U.S. vehicles that were used. And it was very aggressive in deportation, but they did not use the military. And again, this is just one of those things where, are they really going to step over that line, or is this something, again, a campaign promise? And this was all promised on the campaign, by the way. People voted for him. Yeah. But is that a campaign punchline, or is that really a line that's going to be crossed when this can be done without using the United States military? That's the real question that hangs out there.
It is under consideration, from what I'm told. You know, that there are the details still being worked out, but right now, this is the plan. This would be a threshold cross to use portions of the military to perhaps do this. The largest mass deportation program in the history of the United States, one that indeed has been promised from the beginning of this campaign. This is part of the centerpiece of what Donald Trump pledged to do this time around. Now, there are some who think that, you know, as inauguration day approaches, there'll be perhaps influential voices in Donald Trump's ears, perhaps from the business community, which he cares deeply about, who will warn him about the economic impact of this, that these are people whose jobs will disappear, people who have filled jobs that often...
By the way, can we talk about that for a second? Because I understand, Mike, this is a good, and we'll get back to you, Jonathan, to finish, but Mike, this is a great campaign pitch for Republicans, I guess.
Sounds great.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. So, again, he said he was going to do it. Said there were going to be mass deportations, maybe even bloody mass deportations. And the crowds, for whatever reason, cheer this on, right? But then they go into restaurants, and the restaurant's half open. Then they go to the hardware store on Main Street, and, you know, they have to close early. I mean, I saw this happening actually.
And you go to the Aloe store,
all did.
And the products are not there. Yeah. And we did a story yesterday with the New York Times investigative reporter about how this would impact a lot of different companies.
Yeah, but there are workers. Again, I'm just saying that whether you like it or whether you don't like it, businesses, people on Wall Street, small business owners family restaurants. You know, when you start talking about massive deportation and you start talking about actually cutting immigrant work visas coming in, which is really the thing that really has caused the problems, they're like, wait a second, it's a business community, not lefties. It's a business community that's like, hold off on that.
But, Joe, immigration in this country was one of the visible aspects for voters who voted in the last election for president of the United States. They could see it in their public schools. They could see immigrants in public schools. They could see immigrants in the hospital emergency rooms. They could see immigrants pouring into their city or town that they had not witnessed ever before.
By the way, in New York City.
Yes, exactly right. And the other aspect of it is that, you know, and she ran a terrific campaign. Kamala Harris ran a terrific campaign, no doubt about it, but never really addressed the reality that the Biden administration, the first 2 years of the administration, they let the ball drop on the border. They just did. They had other things they were doing, far more important maybe, but in the public's mind and the public's eye, they could see people, uninvited guests, that's what they viewed them as, coming into the country. So now you've got the issue hanging over the incoming Trump administration, all right? They have not yet addressed the fact that this is a budget buster. If you're talking about transporting millions of illegal immigrants back to the country of origin, it's going to make movement of troops to Europe or movement of American troops overseas to look like pennies.
Yeah.
It's a budget buster.
So, and Jonathan, I'll let you finish. I will say, though, that what Mike said is exactly the case, and it's a real concern. And I'm just wondering if this isn't something that, when you look at the budget, when you look at the pressure from Wall Street, when you look at everything else, this isn't something that's compromised, and it's the criminals. It's you know, what did we hear? 15, however many million criminals or whatever the stat that was going around. If that's not the people they look to deport to get out of the country.
I mean, Trump prizes the economy most of all. We know that's his favorite metric as to whether or not his presidency is a success. And for both on this idea of deportation and the tariffs idea, they're linked here. There is some belief that business leaders and others will talk him out of it and say, look, you'll ruin the economy if you do these things. It will damage your presidency. That's possible. Maybe it will narrow. But at least right now, they're talking big. They're acting like they're going to go through it. And these are, again, the signature promises of his campaign. So maybe, yes, maybe he'll cut a deal. Maybe he'll make it smaller. Maybe he'll take the win and move on to something else. But maybe not. And there are a lot of people in this country right now who are very afraid that he'll do exactly what he says.
That's the millions of people in this country afraid of that. And also remember, in 2016, Donald Trump promised a border wall. Mexico is going to pay for it. Neither of those things happened, despite the fact he also owned Washington at that time with a Republican House and a Republican Senate. Tom Homan, who's the border czar appointed by Donald Trump, in an interview yesterday said he's going to use ICE. He's going to take, quote, the handcuffs off of ICE. And he said go after the bad guys first. So didn't say that he wasn't going to go after other people, but that his first concern would be to use ICE to get criminals deported. Let's bring in NBC News and MSNBC political analyst, former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. Claire, good morning. It's always great to see you. So hop in on this conversation. We always take Donald Trump seriously at his word that he's going to at least attempt to do the things he says he wants to do. What do you make of this idea of mass deportation as a practical question of how they'd carry it out?
Well, there's so many things that are not possible that they're saying they're going to do at the same time. For example, Elon Musk is talking about cutting 2/3 of the federal workforce. Well, by the way, does he know that two of the largest employers in the federal workforce are the Pentagon and Homeland Security? So if you take those agencies and set them aside and you cut 2/3 of the workforce, then we're talking about people who deliver payments to the American citizens. We're talking about the Medicare system that delivers payments on behalf of Americans. We're talking about Social Security that delivers payments on behalf of America. So there really is this disconnect between how realistic a mass deportation is in light of other things they say they're going to do and how it's going to look to America if they erect these large holding facilities with the money they take from the military by declaring a national emergency, which, by the way, they tried with the wall. He declared a national emergency and diverted Pentagon funds to do what, 20 miles, 100 miles. He didn't build it, but he built some of it. So it really is just a real head scratcher. Now, I will say this: they will be very savvy about deporting people who have been convicted of crimes or charged with crimes. They'll do really smart photo ops with those folks, and there's about 1 million of those people in the country. Most of it's low-level crime, some of it is not. That's what they're going to do first, and that will be the big splashes they'll use to try to convince Americans that he's doing some mass deportation. Yeah. But I think TBD on the idea that he could do a mass deportation, and I don't think the American public is going to stand for it.
Well, there are a lot of economic issues, as everybody's talked about around the table here. I think that you talk about deporting criminals. I think that's what we would call in politics not a 90-10 issue. That's like a 98-2 issue. I think most Americans are going to want people that came here illegally who are criminals out of the country. So if they, in fact, focus on that, then yes, that's going to be something that's going to be overwhelmingly popular. One of the things they don't want to see are the type of pictures that Donald Trump said he saw back in 2017 at the beginning of his last term. And again, we've been talking here about how we have elections every 2 years, Mika.
Yeah.
And that you do, if you deport criminals, that's a very popular issue. If there are these images of mothers and babies being pulled apart, that's what leads to the blowback against this when Nancy Pelosi became Speaker of the House again in 2018. So that's something that they are aware of and something that it'll be interesting to see how they resolve.